You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. A lot of people complain about their boss or about the person in charge of them. And a favorite American pastime, and maybe it's like this in other countries, but particularly in the United States, we like to complain about our political leaders or just leaders anywhere. It seems it's hard to find good leaders. Lots of people with the title and the position, but not a lot of people with the wisdom and the understanding to know how to actually lead people. So I think we need more help. We need more training. We need more experts in the area of leadership who can lead the leaders so that the ones who are entrusted with responsibility can then lead with authority, but also lead with charisma, with power, with care and empathy for all people. And so these are really important. These characteristics are critical, I think, especially leading through changing times and difficult times. How do we train leaders? And if you are a leader, and I think most people listening would consider themselves leaders in their business because you're probably the only employee, or at least you're the owner and you have a small staff, depending on the size of your business, you are a leader. So the question is, how do we become better and better? And how do we lead and go beyond the typical, stereotypical leadership and really step into that role and create powerful transformation in ourselves and in the people that we are leading and impacting and influence? Well, I want to bring in an expert in this area, and I'm really happy to introduce Noa Ronen. She is a coach, an author, a speaker, and a coffee lover just like me, who brings more than 20 years of experience in change management, human resources, and coaching. Now, Noa encourages leaders and their teams to challenge the norms so they can create the change they care about. Noa, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thank you for having me, Ralph. I'm excited to have this leadership conversation. Always enjoying that. Thank you.
It's such an important thing. And I just, personally, I'm frustrated when I look around and I see leaders not leading, not doing what I feel intuitively they should be doing. And I wonder, is it just that they are incompetent, or do they just not realize how they're coming across? And it seems that, I don't know, maybe you can correct this, that there's no such thing as a born leader, but leaders are made. We have to be trained and learn how to step into that leadership role. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And by the way, in my book, I did a research, and apparently the word leadership, it comes from the origin of the word is Latin. It's the way. It's a path, is to travel. And I find that leadership, like life, like parenting, is a work for life. You don't get there, you work on that. And that's a conscious awareness, constant work on yourself, just like a human being.
And and I think that is really profound, because a lot of people try to portray themselves as perfect, having already arrived, and therefore they are leading everyone else. And it sounds like, by that definition of leadership that you just shared, it's more about a journey that we are all on, and the leader is being transformed even as he or she is influencing and transforming the people around them. It's kind of a shared journey. Is that it?
That's how, there are many different ways to see leadership. I think it's one of those words that you ask 10 people, 100 people, you will get 100 different answers. At least for me, that's how I see it. It's how I grow myself. And the beyond part that you mentioned for me is first, there is the work on yourself to get to know yourself. And then how can you look beyond your leadership, beyond your vision, beyond your values, beyond you, so you can engage others and then get to that maturity where you step back and help to grow the next generation of leaders. That's for me the kind of like the pure leadership of the vision from my perspective.
Now, you have some experience in this and you have a very interesting background. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you come from, and what you've been doing that brought you to this point.
Yeah, when I speak to groups, I say there is probably an urgent question in the room. Where is she from? So I'm originally from Israel. And around 15 years ago, in 2005, my husband and I moved with 2 little kids for 2 years relocation from Israel we started in New York City. Now I am in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And before the move, I started in Israel. You have to go to the army. Everyone needs to give 2 years to the country to volunteer. And I actually started there working with officers, mostly on their executive presence. Because in the end of the day, for people to follow you when the day comes and they need to give their lives, they need to follow the officer. And you need to create a trust and that executive presence that people will trust you. So they didn't call it coaching then. It was more than 20 years ago. But it was kind of coaching and really supporting the officers to show up. And then I worked in human resources and training and in change management. That again, in that phase when I worked in Israel with corporates, they brought very expensive technologies. And the CEO will tell the executive team, make sure people work with this technology as fast as you can. And on one side, I observed the executives and how they communicate and help them to work together. And on the other side, people were afraid that the technology will send them home. It was a different era. So it was very, very interesting for me to watch that. So that's the kind of like the beginning of the story. And then I moved to New York City with 2 little kids. And I kind of like, okay, things will work out. It always worked out for me. But I was stuck for almost 5 years, Ralph. I wanted really to replicate what I did in Israel, but I was stuck. I worked, but I didn't feel fulfilled or that I'm able to influence and create what I want. And I decided to take a break and started blogging because blogging then was like podcasting today.
Mm-hmm.
And I blogged with Hebrew. I just took a pause in my life and I blogged in Hebrew because for years I wanted to blog. And I said, what's a better way to express myself than in my first language? And people just liked what I wrote about. I wrote about being an Israeli mother in New York City and my adventures and perspectives. And people reached out and reminded me that I'm resourceful. And then at the same week, a few different women called me and said, well, we saw your blog and everything that comes out of it. And we're so stuck with our lives. How did you do that? Can you coach me? And they called at the same week with the same ask. They didn't know me. They didn't know each other. They knew me from the blog, but not in person. And I said, well, maybe it's time for me to listen to the universe. I'm getting a signal here and I need to listen. So I didn't coach them, but that's how I got into coaching. And that's where, the second adventure started.
Yeah. It's interesting when I'm teaching people about some of the similar things, but in strategic communication and mastering your message, one of the first things you want to do is establish yourself so that people know, like, and trust you. But trying to get people to trust you in a business environment is it seems like child's play compared to trying to get people to trust you in a military situation where it's life or death. That is really a huge, that's an obstacle. How in the world do you get people to entrust their lives to their military leaders like that?
Well, it's not just what I did, right? And that's what I always remind, when we coach people, there is also a personal journey that they are going through. And there is the environment and there is the culture, and understanding that, there is a training for you to trust your officer, when you go in life and death situations. But it starts for me always, and that's, sometimes when I hear people saying there is no heart in corporate. I do see heart in corporate. I see a lot of leaders, and the same with the officers. And what I'm trying to say, that it starts with the human connection. If we all think about trust, we cannot trust someone we don't appreciate, that we don't connect with. The same with business, right? We will not do business with someone we don't trust. So for me, it starts with human connection. And until I'm willing to do that work on myself to understand where are my areas that I don't communicate well with others, where are the areas that I am not aware of, and if I will be courageous enough to get the feedback that I need to get, so I can create a trust with people from a genuine place and not just because we need to do things. So for me, no matter if it's the army, if it's the, parents and kids, if it's volunteering or business or corporate, it's all start with human connection and to trust each other.
I like that. And it's interesting, even though we are surrounded by technology, smartphones, internet, social media, all of these gadgets and tools that we have to communicate with other people, people still feel very isolated and cut off from one another. And no matter how good the tool is, we still need to make an effort to reach out and make a human connection with other people.
Yeah. And I can tell you that even with my, we talk a lot about, there is a lot of conversation in the last few years about introverted and extroverted people. Mm-hmm. And you can see that even the introverted people that prefer less human connection, they do need the social connection. In the end of the day, we are tribal human beings, right? We like the herd. That's how we have cities, right? It's all happening because we need to be next to other people. Family is a system, company is a system, a city is a system, a village is a system. We were always living in that way. And we all need that human connection.
And that is so true. I'm one of those introverts. I'm someone who, I like my privacy and my space, and I don't need to be overly stimulated by other people. But that's not to say that I can do without people, because you can't be in business, or especially in the kind of business I'm in, and not be able to connect with other people. It's just impossible. So anyone who's listening, if you are an introvert, you're not excused. You still have to be able to reach out. You have to be able to make human connections with people. And, it's interesting when you're talking, Noah, I'm watching The Survivor on Paramount on demand, going back and watching, all 500 seasons of it or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
And
that's perseverance.
When they all get together, you mentioned tribe, they all get together into their tribes, and you usually in every show you have at least one person who's just kind of to themselves. They're out to the side. You know, they like to go on long solitary walks. They go off by themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then the rest of the tribe looks at that and says, well, what's their problem? How come they're so antisocial? And those are the people who are at risk of getting voted off the show, kicked out of the tribe. And so I see in that an analogy in business and life. We can't just completely cut ourselves off from people. Even though we've got all these wonderful communication tools, we still need that human connection. Why? To build the trust, because that's how we lead. That's how we influence. That's how we make an impact, not just on our clients and prospects and on the world around us, but family, friends, business partners, colleagues, affiliates, associates, people who can refer us to other people. There's a pattern here. We have to make those human connections, people connecting with other people. So speaking of leadership, when you're working with leaders, whatever the context is, what would you say, Noa, is the biggest challenge you find when you're trying to get these leaders to become more personable, to become more human, to really up their leadership game? What's the biggest challenge that prevents people from stepping into that role of leadership?
So I will take a step back. Many of them are really good at relationship, maybe even have too much empathy sometimes that can get in the way. So I will try to explain that in a different way, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. I believe that we have two energies. One is the doing energy and one is the being energy. And it's not like doing is better than being or being is better than doing, okay? So the doing energy, most of us know that's the actions, right? The to-do list, let's go, 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 go. We all know actions. It's what we learned when we were little kids. And actually, we learned that actions are what we rewarded for. If you think about it, our parents would tell us, be a good boy and go clean up your room. So what does it mean? Cleaning equals good, right? And we learned that formula, that actions is what expected from us. So that's the doing energy. The being energy from human beings, for me, as I see it, is a container of the emotions and the thoughts and the fears and the aspirations and beliefs that we have and perspectives that we have and so much more. Okay, so some of us have more tendency to be in the doing energy. Many of them call themselves, when they come to the meeting with me, they talk fast, they say they are doers, they focus on actions, getting things done, results, right? So there is a fast pace. The beers are more oriented to the emotions and the thoughts. And sometimes it will be harder for them to move into actions, or the emotions and thoughts will get in the way to move into actions. And sometimes the being energy will take over when we lead a change or go through a change. I call it the being of the system. We have it also personally, but it can also be as part of the system that we are trying to lead a change in. And that's really my focus, whether if it's when I worked with organizations through change, when we implemented technologies and it impacted the organization, or whether if I work with individuals on their personal change or relocation or promotion. Something is happening in that moment of change for us that we need to redefine who we are in this new situation. And it doesn't matter if it's positive or less positive. So if I'm being promoted, who am I when I'm promoted, moving from being a team member to a team leader? My relationships are changing. The way I show up is changing. And when I'm getting married, I was one person before I got married, and now I'm a different person. So for some of us, the doing is taking over, and for some of us, the being is taking over. And what I'm trying to do when I work with my clients is really first create that awareness. Where is my being? Where is my energy? And how it might impact the way I influence, the way I communicate, the way I show up with others. So just for example, the doers want to go very fast. So they ignore the being in the room when we lead a change.
Mm-hmm.
Being in the room means the concerns that people have, the beliefs that people have, the hopes that they have, and they just ignore it all and they try to run fast. And what the system does, and you probably saw that, the system will slow them down or stop them. And that's where they get frustrated because none of the doers like to be slowed down. They told me they hate that, okay? But when I explain that to them and I say, pay attention, are you paying attention to the being in the room? If you're going to go back and have a conversation, you will collect that information and you will be able to move fast. So it's just creating that awareness sometimes that we have those tendencies, and we always go back when we're stressed and overwhelmed to our old tendencies, our old autopilots. It feels very comfortable, even if it's a bad habit. So one of the things I'm trying to bring into the attention when I work with my clients is that specific thing, that you can work on yourself and get better and better. And what I hear mostly is, I want to be better for my people. I want to be better for myself as a human being. So I see that, and it just shows up in different ways. And what happens sometimes when people go through training or other ways to teach you to become more aware of yourself, I call it the illusion of awareness, we miss the part of telling people, you learn these new behaviors, you're working on yourself, you're doing the efforts, you're really trying to become a better self. But we forget to say that when you're overwhelmed and stressed, you're going to go back to your old behaviors. Always.
Yeah.
I say the trick is how short you can stay in that space of those tendencies. So how fast you can bring yourself back to the new behavior, but you will always go back.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it makes sense. Tell me if I need to bring an example.
Well, it does trigger a question. The example you used is someone who is a doer, and you're trying to get them to be mindful of being so that they kind of slow down. What if it's the reverse, like someone like me, where I'm more analytical, I'm thinking, I'm more into thoughts and feelings and strategies, and I like to ponder and process things. And for the doers, it's like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up.
Right.
But if I'm leading from being, how would someone then incorporate more doing so that they're just not living in their head and not getting anything done? I guess that would be my question.
Yeah. So first, I think it's important to create that conversation in the room and say some of us are more beers and some of us are more doers, and we need to create that awareness, right, in the room. And there are two things that I can suggest right now, but again, it's that really deeper work to understand what works for us to move into action. So I don't like to talk about recipes, but something that I especially if you are in that thinking space, the analytical space, I always need to know better. I always need more data. I need to know better. I need to be expert of what I'm talking about what I'm going to talk about. And sometimes the question that can ground you is, what, with the information I have right now, so with the information I have right now, what is the first step I can take? With the information I have right now, what is one step I can take?
That's a great question. That immediately kind of shifts your focus, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that can be something that you can just put on a sticky note and to remind yourself constantly, or have a person next to you that maybe is more of a doer. And when you get too much in not making a decision and keep researching and looking for data, that they will say, with the information we have right now, Ralph, where can we start? What is the first step we can take? And that kind of like invite you to understand that maybe it's time to let go of what your tendency and take one step. It doesn't mean that you need to do everything, but let's start with one step. So that's with the thoughts. With the emotions, what I sometimes find is that there is an assumption. There is an assumption that everyone feel like us in that change situation. So everyone will reject that because I rejected that. Everyone will have a dramatic experience because I have right now a dramatic reaction to that. And that's where we need to pause and go and have a conversation with other people. So I always invite that group of clients and I say, is it really true? How do you know that it's true? Go and have conversations with people. And I can't say 100%, but they will come back and say, I realized that it was really me. And some people feel like me, but others are totally fine with that. So it's a lot about how you have the conversations, and again, creating that awareness to yourself where you are, and how can you look beyond your experience, right?
I love that. That's very useful. In fact, I wrote this down. I think I'm going to print it out. I'm going to post it on my computer screen here. With the information I have right now, what is the first step or the next best step? That's a tremendous question. And it's questions like that really, I think, illustrate the value of having a coach, having someone outside of you who can ask those really good questions and teach you to ask those questions. So, Noa, if people, organizations want to find out more about you and about what you're up to, your coaching services and the other things that you offer, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Thank you for asking that. So the best way is to just look for my website, Noa, N-O-A, there is no H, so noaronencoaching.com. Or mostly I will be more vocal, let's call it like that, on LinkedIn, if you want to look for social media. So it's Noa R Coach.
Perfect. And we'll have your website link on the Rebelpreneur website as well, or just look up Noa Ronen on LinkedIn and you will find her there. She's a coach, author, speaker, and a coffee lover. What kind of coffee do you love?
I am a coffee lover, but now it's too late for coffee.
It's too late, yeah.
We're going to have a coffee date soon.
We'll have to do that sometime.
Yeah.
Because I'm a coffee lover as well. So any final thoughts or words of wisdom? I mean, for me, just that one question was worth the price of admission here. If I could walk away with that, it has been a really fantastic interview, and it really, I feel like there's so much more we could explore. But any final thoughts that you could leave with our listeners to push them in the right direction?
Can I have two?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So one thing that just showed up for me from what you said is that, especially with high-level executives, what happens is that they don't have a person to reflect. There are so much in the do because they have so much, and they not always have the person to share what they need to share because there are some stuff that you cannot. And then just having someone externally to bounce ideas and reflect and share emotions, and also share how they observe you. That mostly when you lead a lot of people, most of them are afraid to tell you what's going on with them and with their experience with you. So having that experience working with someone that is external, and also is that you feel that they will be able to share with you how they experience you, is something that I find that is relieving. There is that relief of, I can have that partnership. So that's something that I wanted to say, just following what you shared. And a quick one that I find is, I love this. It's mine, but I really like that. So it's, the problem is not in the problem. The problem is that we're stuck with a solution. The problem is not the problem. The problem is that we're stuck with a solution. So many times what I see is that when people come to me, they believe that the solution to the problem is X or Y or Z. And that's where they get stuck. So not really with the problem, but with believing that they don't address the problem with a specific solution. And I always say there are always more than one solution to your problem, and it's probably not the one you're stuck with right now. So just thinking about that, it's very deep.
That is very profound, and as a strategist, part of what I do is to help people see that there's more than one way to achieve your goal. So be firm in your purpose, but flexible in your approach. There may be a dozen or so solutions you haven't even considered, because most people, they have an immediate response that here's what we need to do, and if that doesn't work, we have plan B, and after that they get stuck. And that's where having a coach, having someone outside to be able to come in and ask questions and give you feedback and suggest alternatives to the one or two or three things that you've already considered, that can be a game changer. That can be life-changing. So thank you so much, Noa Ronen. She is a coach. She's an author, a speaker, a coffee lover, and she brings more than 20 years of experience in change management, human resources, and coaching. She believes leaders and their teams are to challenge those norms and create the change they care about. You can find out more at noaronencoaching.com. Noa, thank you so much for your time and for chatting with us on Rebelpreneur Radio today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate having me on your show. Thank you.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.